There is a philosophy currently gaining momentum called the everyday camera. Basically owning a camera that you take everywhere. I've been trying to do this now for a year or so and it's had a noticeable impact on my photography and wider creativity. But what should people look for when choosing their own? That's exactly what I'm going to talk about here, and there are 6 things you might want to look out for. I often get asked why not just use a smartphone, which I'll touch on, but first I'll talk about why, to me, the everyday camera is so important.
Having a camera with you everywhere you go is as close to a shortcut as you can get when it comes to improving your photography. I'm sure you've heard about the 10,000 hours rule and how that is the estimated length of time it takes to become an expert in anything. But if you're only taking your camera out for 2 to 3 hours on a dedicated trip every single week, it's going to take you a long time to get to that 10,000 hours. And that's where this comes in. If you've got a camera with you all of the time, you're going to chip away at those 10,000 hours a lot quicker than if you just use dedicated photography sessions. Not only that, but you'll also always have something with you for when the unexpected happens. Now, in my opinion, there is one fundamental thing that you need from an everyday camera that I'll get onto. But before we do that, let's have a look at some of the physical attributes that you'll need to consider. So if you're going to fully embrace the everyday camera philosophy, then having a camera that is portable, sort of like this one, is a really key decision to take. It needs to be small enough and light enough that you're going to want to take it everywhere with you. And I don't necessarily mean take it somewhere in a bag, because a camera in a bag isn't as useful as a camera that you can wear on your shoulder or around your neck. So think about how comfortable it's going to be to carry your camera around every day. The reason for this is you're going to use it more if it's easily accessible, and a bag isn't easily accessible in my opinion. I use this as my everyday camera, the Fujifilm X100V, and
what I was saying before I was rudely interrupted by a corrupted memory card is that whilst portable, I mean pretty much every camera's portable because wouldn't be much use otherwise, would it? But whilst it's a fairly small camera, this one, it's not exactly pocketable. I think to be the best everyday camera, it would be great if it went in a pocket, and this one very much doesn't. I mean, it doesn't help that I've got this attachment on the front of it here, this little lens hood, but even without that, it's a little too cumbersome to put in a pocket, and that's maybe one of the reasons not to go for this. And there are another couple of reasons that you might not want to go for this camera as well, which I'll come on to. Anyway, back to me when my files weren't corrupted.
when it comes to what the camera can actually do, technically speaking, I think most of us expect
our memory cards not to corrupt, and this one from Lexar hasn't met up to that challenge. That's why it's in this little bag, so I'm not tempted to use it again. But from our cameras, most of us expect decent autofocus performance, that they're fairly good in low light at higher ISOs, that they've got a certain resolution, and that can depend on the sensor size. But there's various other little bits as well that I'll come onto. But everyone's requirements from the camera are slightly different.
I think you need to consider what's important to you and how you shoot. You might only shoot handheld in low light, for example, in which case image stabilization is a non-negotiable. This doesn't have image stabilization as one of its downfalls. One of the questions I get asked most when I raise this topic is, why not just use a phone? And for me, phones aren't built for photography. I don't feel as connected to photography and as connected to my creativity when I'm trying to use a phone to take pictures. Using a camera like this is a completely different feeling. I don't know whether it's just the ergonomics of it and the feel of it and the fact that it's got a viewfinder. I'm not someone that enjoys taking a picture looking just at a screen. Phone might be a great choice for an everyday camera for you because, I mean, we've got them on us all the time anyway. But for me, they don't produce as nice an image, and that comes back to the very thing, the technical specifications, things like being able to shoot wide open on an f2 lens. That's something that is important to me, so give that some consideration and factor that into your purchasing decisions. Another thing that's been inspiring me to take more and more images over the last few months have been my experimentations with film cameras, and I've been also using this week's sponsor, Skillshare, to learn more about film photography in their extensive online classes. Whether you want to learn about film photography, digital photography, editing, video production, or even something completely unrelated like gardening, like I've been doing recently, then take a look at Skillshare. It's the largest online learning community for creatives like you, and there are thousands of classes led by industry experts, many of whom I'm sure you know and trust. You may be looking to learn for a hobby, maybe it's for your career, but Skillshare is a great place to take your learning to the next level. I mentioned film photography, and I've been working my way through Kyle McDougall's excellent class on this very topic. So join me and thousands of others, and the first 500 people to sign up using the link in the description below will receive an absolutely free trial month of Skillshare. So go and check it out. The third thing to look for is flexibility, and to me this differs slightly to the last point. A camera could be everything you want it to be technically, but maybe you want interchangeable lenses and it's got a fixed lens, or maybe there's something else that lets it down that isn't the autofocus or the image quality. Specifically with this, I'm mainly talking about battery life, and the battery life in this is not great. I've never needed more than 2 batteries in a single day, so chucking an extra battery in a bag isn't a big deal to me, but it might be to some people, and it's definitely worth considering how many shots you think you'll need in a day. It's also worth considering whether or not you'll be shooting video, because that is more of a drain on battery than taking stills is. With regard to interchangeable lenses, that's completely your choice. Obviously, there's a whole lot of flexibility in being able to zoom in and out, but for me, I like my everyday camera to have a fixed lens, in this case 23mm, which is 35mm on a full frame. You could potentially go for something from the XT series, maybe an XT50 or an XT5 or an XT4 with smaller interchangeable lenses, but that negates the portability factor. As soon as you start bringing additional lenses, that kind of changes the game a bit. But maybe you could pick one sort of pancake lens to live on it most of the time, and then have other lenses to use on it when you go out for dedicated shoots. That is basically the best description of a flexible camera there is. If you can find one that will be your everyday camera and your main camera, then that is the perfect scenario. For me, those interchangeable lens cameras are just a little bit too big to be my everyday camera. Also, I completely forgot to mention video, which I said I'd speak about, because obviously a lot of cameras are video capable now, so maybe that's something you want to consider. I don't use my everyday camera for video. It's a conscious choice that this is a stills camera only, and my video kit is now completely different. I've spoken about why I do that in some previous videos, and it's all to do with separating my work into photography and video. I see them as two quite separate things now. When you're buying an everyday camera, you need to trust that it's going to work, that it's going to last. And when you're throwing it in and out of bags, taking it everywhere you go, it needs to be capable of getting bumped and scraped and knocked. So the quality of the actual build of the camera is a really important factor to take into consideration. I've had this camera for 4 years now, and it's got the odd scuff, the odd mark, but overall, it's in really good condition. I do look after it, but equally, I've knocked it on so many things. It's constantly in and out of bags, conversely to what I said before about wearing it all the time, but it does go in and out of bags, and it just gets used. Cameras should be used. There is no point in keeping your camera pristine and just on a shelf all the time, I suppose. It's there to be taken out, and these things are built well. It's why they're expensive, because they can take knocks. My old Sony A7 S3, for example, I fell over when it was on my tripod and I prized the bottom of the camera out, but it still worked. Even though I did that, obviously it needed to be fixed for weather sealing and everything else. And weather sealing is a really important thing. If you're using it in all conditions, it needs to be able to survive a shower or the cold. I bought a third-party little lens adapter for this. It's just a ring that screws into the end, and that makes it weather sealed. So when you spend a bit more money, cameras tend to be weather sealed, they tend to be robust, and they tend to last. And that's something you need to think about. Don't go buying a cheaper camera, because I believe that's a false economy and it's not going to last you years and years and years as you want it to. It's clouded over quite a bit, which might mean the end of the photography, but that ties in quite well with after the shot, because I think the shots that actually come out of your camera need a bit more consideration when it comes to this. Some people, me included at times, quite like to concentrate on a straight out of camera look. I've got a pretty big backlog of images that need editing most of the time anyway, so to be adding into them day after day after day isn't really what I want. So it's nice to be able to get images that I can use on social media or wherever that come straight from the camera and require very little editing whatsoever. I've spoken about this with Fujifilm cameras in the past, but they have these recipes, which I still don't like as a term, but I'm going to have to run with it. But basically profiles that are all over the internet that you can program into your camera to give it a certain look straight out of camera. And there are some really pleasing looks that you can plug in and just get JPEGs out of the camera that are more than good enough for the majority of use cases. So how you can tweak a camera to get images straight out of it that look pleasing to you is something to consider. The other thing to consider is how easy it is to get images off a camera. And I don't just mean by taking a memory card out and putting it in a laptop. The beauty of these kind of cameras now is that you can connect them directly to mobile devices, whether they be phones or tablets like the iPad, and just do some quick edits straight away and post them to social media. So think about how easy it is to transfer images from these across to the iPad. With this, it's fairly straightforward. There is just an app to use, and there probably is with most other cameras as well. I mean, not used every single camera that's out there. I can't comment on all of them, so it's worth finding that out before you commit to a purchase. I can't remember if there used to be a bridge here or a path. I feel like, I don't know, but in a few years since I've been here, whatever it was, it's clearly washed away. I've owned cameras that I don't find all that enjoyable to use, that don't inspire me to pick them up and use them, and as such I find that I don't use them. I don't want to take them anywhere, never mind everywhere. So you need to find a camera that does that for you, something that sparks that initial joy that you had when you first picked up a DSLR camera or a mirrorless camera or something similar and started taking your first pictures with lovely bokeh in the background and blurring things out. And you need to find something that captures those kind of moments that you think, yeah, I want to go out and shoot with that camera today, because when you're using it every day, you have to have that kind of affinity and that connection with your camera to be able to use it in the best possible way. And if you've not got that, all of those other points that I've just mentioned become completely irrelevant, because if you aren't going to use it every day, it doesn't really matter what it is or what it does. I found that with this camera, despite its flaws, the more I use it, the more I love using it, the more I want to use it, and the more inspired I feel to take it everywhere I go, and not just capture landscapes. Landscapes are the kind of thing that I love to shoot. It's what got me into photography, but I've now found that just by using this, I love shooting all of the aspects of life as well. It gives me a deep sense of joy and connection that I've not had from my photography for some time now. And it's all down to this and the everyday camera philosophy. Okay, I said earlier that I wouldn't necessarily recommend the X100V as an everyday camera. There's a number of reasons, some of which I've already touched on. The size and lack of portability, the lack of IBIS, fly on it, they're the main two. The other one is the price. These are 4 years old and used. They are still going for a ridiculous amount of money, and that is because the price is being pushed up by the lack of availability of the newer version of this, the X100V1, which I think retails at £1,700, but that's if you can get hold of one, which you can't. The advantages of that over this are IBIS and greater resolution, and I can't see much difference other than those two things. The battery life's the same, the lenses are the same, I think, and yeah, they're the only real reasons to go for an upgrade in my opinion, if you can get one, which you can't. Something I would like to try is the Ricoh GR3X, which looks like a really interesting little camera. It's got a 40mm fixed lens, f2.8, and it takes some, in the right hands, really good looking photos. Straight out of camera again. You can adapt the colour profiles and everything else within camera so that you get a really nice image straight out, if everything I've seen online is to be believed. But like I've said, the most important thing you could do when you're getting an everyday camera is get one that you want to take everywhere with you and it inspires you to take photographs.